Most people spend their entire life working for money. But what if I told you that the rich don't work for money at all?
When I was just a kid, I had two fathers. One was highly educated, had a secure job, and struggled with money his whole life.
The other never finished high school, yet he became one of the richest men in Hawaii.
Both dads gave me advice about money, but their lessons were completely opposite.
One told me to work hard and get a safe job.
The other taught me something that changed my life forever. Don't work for money, make money work for you.
And that single lesson is the reason millions of people change the way they think about wealth.
Today, we're diving into the powerful ideas from the legendary book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, all. Welcome to Book Podcast Zone. I am Emma.
I am John.
So today our mission is to basically deconstruct some of the most, deeply ingrained beliefs that you and frankly most of us hold about work and wealth.
Right. What it actually means to be financially secure.
Exactly. We're going to use those two contrasting paternal figures from our source material to decode exactly how the wealthy operate behind the scenes.
And let's be clear right up front. We aren't just going to list off generic financial advice like save your pennies.
No. We are going to mathematically and psychologically tear apart the systems we all live in to see why they function the way they do.
Yeah. The entire foundation of this deep dive rests on a massive dichotomy. We are introduced to this tale of two fathers.
Right, the poor dad.
Right, who is highly educated, he's a government employee, and he places, like, the highest possible value on securing a safe, steady job.
And then on the flip side, we have the rich dad, who is far less formally educated. He's a business owner, and his entire worldview centers around financial intelligence.
What we're really looking at here is a clash of paradigms, two completely different languages of money.
Yeah, the author, reflecting on his youth in Hawaii, describes being mentored by his friend's father, the rich dad.
While his biological father, the poor dad, is telling him to go to school, get good grades, and find a safe job with good benefits.
The poor dad implicitly believes that the corporation or, the government will take care of you.
Right. Whereas the rich dad believes that delegating your financial well-being to an employer or a pension fund is basically the riskiest, most reckless thing you can possibly do.
But I have to offer a massive pushback here right out of the gate.
Oh, go for it.
Because we need to defend you, the listener, who might be sitting here thinking they've done everything right. I mean, the poor dad's advice, go to school, get good grades, get a secure job, work hard until you're 65, that is not just some random piece of bad advice.
No, it's the standard script.
It is the exact step-by-step blueprint of the traditional American dream. It's what our teachers told us, what our parents told us, what our entire societal infrastructure rewards.
Yeah, completely.
So are we really saying that the traditional American dream is actually a trap?
Well, that is the uncomfortable reality we have to confront today. And yes, according to the text, it is absolutely a trap.
Wow.
It's what the source material famously refers to as the rat race. And the reason it's a trap isn't because education is inherently bad.
Yay.
It's because of the macroeconomic reality of how wages function. Like, since the 1970s in the United States, productivity has just skyrocketed, right?
Oh, absolutely. Off the charts.
But real wages, actual purchasing power, have largely stagnated. So the American Dream blueprint was built for an economic era that honestly no longer exists.
That makes a lot of sense. So the text introduces its first major paradigm shift here, which is the rich don't work for money.
Let's really drill down into that because, not working for money sounds like a luxury only a billionaire can afford.
Right. Sounds absurd.
How does that practically apply to someone making, say, $60,000 a year?
Well, it comes down to understanding the psychological engine that keeps people trapped on the treadmill. The author recounts working for rich dad's small businesses as a kid, doing menial labor for absolute pennies.
Which was probably incredibly frustrating for a kid.
Oh, totally. But it was a deliberate lesson to expose the two very primal, very powerful emotions that drive the middle class.
Fear and greed.
Exactly. Fear and greed. And those words get thrown around a lot on Wall Street, right?
Oh, constantly.
But here, they are applied to everyday people. It's the fear of not having enough money to pay the rent, the fear of being fired, the fear of losing your employer-sponsored health insurance.
The health insurance one is huge in the U.S.
Massive. That fear is literally your alarm clock. You wake up, you go to work, you push through the anxiety.
Because you have to.
Right. And then you get your paycheck. And suddenly the second emotion kicks in, greed, or perhaps the more accurate word is desire.
Yeah, desire. You see a new car, you want a nicer TV, you want that vacation to decompress from the incredibly stressful job you just worked all week.
So you spend the money.
And then the fear returns
Right.
because the money is gone.
Precisely. And if we zoom out to the macroeconomic level, this fear-desire cycle is the literal engine of the U.S. consumer economy.
The fear gets you to produce, and the desire gets you to consume everything you just earned.
Let's say you get a promotion, you get a raise. What actually happens?
Your desires increase proportionally.
Exactly. You buy a bigger house in the suburbs,
Yeah.
which means you take on a larger 30-year mortgage.
And then you lease a nicer car to commute from that new suburb.
Your expenses rise in exact lockstep with your income. You are earning significantly more, but you are not getting any wealthier.
It's like running on a treadmill where someone else controls the buttons and the speed just keeps increasing.
Yep.
Inflation is ticking the speed up by 3 or 4% a year. Lifestyle creep is ticking the speed up. The rising cost of healthcare is ticking the speed up.
You are sprinting, sweating, absolutely exhausting yourself, but you never actually move forward a single inch.
Look at modern American life. We all know people who are earning low to mid six-figure salaries, but are still living paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, it's so common. They are utterly controlled by the fear of losing their job, because if the paychecks stop for even 1 month,
The whole house of cards collapses. They can't make the mortgage. They lose their health care. It is a terrifying way to live, but it's brilliantly disguised as success.
and that is the brilliance of the alternative presented in the text. You have to step off the treadmill entirely.
Wow.
You have to overcome those two emotions through financial intelligence. Instead of trading your limited finite time for a paycheck that gets immediately devoured by expanding expenses, you must build systems and acquire assets that generate passive income.
You make the money work for you rather than you working for it.
Exactly. The wealthy don't obsess over their salary. They obsess over acquiring assets that produce cash flow, regardless of whether they physically get out of bed that day.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
So understanding that we need to build assets immediately forces us to confront a massive blind spot.
Which is,
Most of us don't actually know what an asset is.
that's so true. The source material makes a profound point about our education system here. Like, we spend years in school, we learn complex calculus, we memorize the periodic table, we learn to analyze Shakespearean sonnet.
But we are taught absolutely nothing about how to manage a credit card.
Nothing. Or how the amortization schedule of a mortgage works, or how to read a basic personal income statement.
It is a staggering educational gap. And because of that gap, people enter the workforce completely defenseless against financial institutions.
Institutions that are specifically designed to extract their wealth.
Right. The credit card companies and the banks rely on the fact that you don't understand compounding interest.
So to fix this, the source text introduces a deliberately simple, almost painfully basic set of definitions that completely bypasses traditional GAAP accounting.
Yeah, in this framework, an asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket, whether you work or not.
And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
Let's stop right there because this is where a lot of readers completely lose their minds when they first encounter this material.
Oh, absolutely. They get furious.
If we apply that brutally simple definition, an asset puts money in, a liability takes money out, what does that mean for the absolute holy grail of the American middle class?
The primary residence.
Exactly. If I buy a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, traditional wisdom says I just acquired a massive asset. But under this definition, my primary residence isn't an asset at all.
According to a bank's accounting, your house is an asset, but it's the bank's asset, not yours.
Whoa.
Yeah. According to the cash flow logic of the source material, your primary residence is absolutely a liability.
Break that down for me because that is a tough pill to swallow.
Let's look at the actual mechanics of a typical U.S. suburban home purchase.
Yeah.
You put down maybe 10 or 20%, and you take out a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage.
Right.
If you look at an amortization schedule for the first 10 to 15 years of that loan, the vast majority of your monthly payment is going straight to interest.
It's pure profit for the bank.
Exactly. Every single month, money leaves your pocket to pay that interest. Money leaves your pocket to pay local property taxes.
Which never go away.
Never. Money leaves your pocket for homeowners association fees, insurance, and the inevitable maintenance when the HVAC system fails or the roof needs replacing.
So it is actively, relentlessly draining your personal cash flow every single month.
Yes. I know people will fight this tooth and nail. If you sit down at a dinner party and tell a homeowner their house is a liability, They will argue until they are blue in the face.
They'll say, but real estate appreciates. My house went up $50,000 in value last year.
Right, but what the text is forcing us to realize is that appreciation is phantom wealth until you sell.
It doesn't pay for your groceries today.
Exactly. You are forcing the listener to look strictly at cash flow. Until you liquidate that house, it is not putting a single dollar in your checking account.
In fact, if you lose your job tomorrow, that house isn't going to feed you.
No, it is going to threaten to put you into foreclosure if you don't keep feeding it.
That's a scary thought. And the text uses brilliant cash flow diagrams to illustrate this. They show exactly why the middle class struggles so much, despite having high professional class incomes.
Walk us through that diagram.
Okay, so a middle class person gets a promotion. The income flows into their checking account. But what do they immediately do?
They buy liabilities that society has conditioned them to think are assets.
Yes, they buy the bigger house. They finance a luxury SUV. They buy boats, designer clothes, and expensive vacations on high-interest credit cards.
So the money flows into the income column, drops straight down into the liability column, and rushes right out the expense column to pay the banks and the corporations.
It's a sieve. They're trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom.
And this leads to what is arguably the golden rule of this entire philosophy. It means it is not how much money you make, it is how much money you keep.
You could be a specialized surgeon making $500,000 a year, but if your expenses, your mortgage on the McMansion, the private school tuitions, the luxury car leases total $499,000 a year, you are not rich.
You are just a very highly paid, highly stressed person in the rat race, entirely dependent on your ability to keep performing surgeries.
The wealthy, on the other hand, have engineered a completely different cash flow pattern.
Their primary income doesn't come from a W-2 salary, does it?
No, it comes from their asset column. They own commercial real estate that throws off monthly rental income. They own equity in businesses that distribute quarterly profits.
They own stock portfolios that pay dividends.
Exactly. That money flows into their income column without their physical labor, and what do they do with it?
They don't buy a liability.
No, they use that passive income to buy more assets. It becomes a self-sustaining, compounding cycle of wealth generation.
They're focused relentlessly on expanding their asset column, not upgrading their lifestyle with shiny liabilities.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
So if the key is focusing on the asset column, that forces us to reevaluate what we are actually dedicating our lives to. The text refers to this as minding your own business.
Now, when we say that, we aren't using the colloquial phrase for stop being nosy.
Right.
We are talking about a profound conceptual difference between your profession, what you do from 9 to 5 to pay the bills, and your actual business, which is the asset column you are building.
This is a vital distinction that most people completely miss.
Mm-hmm.
When you ask the average American what their business is, they will say, oh, I'm a commercial banker, or I'm a software engineer for a tech company.
But as the text points out, that is their profession. That is what they do to earn a paycheck. Their business is something entirely different.
Your business is your asset column.
Yes. When you work at a bank as an employee, you are dedicating the best hours of your life to minding the bank owner's business. You are utilizing your labor to make the shareholders rich.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate here. Does this mean everyone listening to this right now needs to march into their boss's office tomorrow morning, dramatically quit their 9-to-5 job, and become a full-time risk-taking entrepreneur?
God, no.
Because frankly, that sounds like a recipe for financial ruin for a lot of families who rely on that steady paycheck to feed their kids.
No, not at all. And it's crucial to understand that the source text does not advocate for reckless behavior. It does not say you have to quit your job.
Okay, good.
What it advocates for is a fundamental shift in how you view your job. You need to treat your W-2 job as a means to an end. Keep your day job. Be a fantastic employee.
But understand that your salary is essentially your seed capital.
Exactly. The goal is to use the excess from that salary to buy real estate, to invest in index funds, or to fund a scalable side business.
You keep your daytime profession to pay your living expenses, but you spend your evenings and weekends minding your own business, systematically building up that asset column.
It is a massive psychological shift. Think about the standard flow of capital for an American employee. You wake up, you commute, you go to work to enrich your employer, you generate value for the company.
And then you get your paycheck, but before you even see the gross amount, the government has already taken a massive cut in federal and state taxes through your W-4 withholdings.
So you've just worked to enrich the government.
Then you take your net pay, and you immediately pay your mortgage and your auto loan, meaning you are working to enrich the bank.
You are essentially a highly efficient, perfectly optimized wealth generation machine for everyone except yourself.
It is incredibly sobering when you lay bare the mechanics of it. And that is exactly why building the asset column is the only path to true security.
If you only have a profession, your security is entirely dependent on the whims of an HR department, the profitability of your employer, and the macroeconomic climate.
If a recession hits, you could be laid off in an instant.
But if you have been quietly minding your own business for a decade, relentlessly funneling your excess cash into income-producing assets, you are building a fortress of financial security that no manager can ever fire you from.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
Now, you just mentioned the government taking their cut before the employee even sees the money, which is the perfect segue into what the source material calls the secret weapon.
Taxes and corporations.
Exactly. We are going to dive into a bit of the historical narrative provided by the book, and I want to state explicitly for you listening that we are simply exploring the historical viewpoints presented in the source text to understand the financial mechanics.
Right. We are not endorsing any political ideology or taking sides on tax policy here. We are just analyzing the source.
But the mechanical history of taxation, as explained here, is genuinely eye-opening.
It really is, because it explains how the rules of the game were established. The book outlines how the tax system originally started in places like the U.S. and England.
Historically, income taxes were not levied on the working class.
Right. They were introduced essentially as a Robin Hood concept, a temporary measure to take from the extremely wealthy to fund wars or government services.
And the masses supported it because, frankly, it didn't apply to them.
But what happened over time is that as the government's operational appetite for money grew, the tax net inevitably had to expand.
It crept downward. It ensnared the upper middle class, the middle class, and eventually the working poor.
And here is the ultimate irony presented in the text.
Mm-hmm.
The wealthy, the original targets of the tax, didn't just sit there and let their wealth be confiscated.
No, because they are financially intelligent. They hired the best corporate lawyers and the sharpest tax accountants, and they legally changed the rules of the game for themselves.
They utilized the power of the corporate entity.
It's like you are sitting down to play Monopoly with your friends, and everyone is rolling the dice and paying rent, but you suddenly realize one player has a totally different rule book hidden under the table.
Huh. That's a great way to put it.
Their rules allow them to bypass the go-to-jail space, skip penalties, and expense their hotels before paying the bank.
That is a flawless analogy for the U.S. tax code. To ground this in reality, we have to look at the fundamental mathematical difference between how an individual wage earner is taxed versus how a corporate entity is taxed.
Right. The middle-class employee, the poor dad, operates on a very rigid, inescapable formula. Earn, tax, spend.
You earn your salary, the government extracts its taxes right off the top through withholding, and then you receive the net amount.
You then have to try and survive, pay your mortgage, buy your groceries, and clothe your kids using strictly whatever is left over.
The earn, tax, spend cycle. It is mathematically brutal because you are paying taxes on 100% of your labor before you even get a chance to feed yourself.
But the wealthy, utilizing LLCs, S-Corp, and C-Corp, operate on a totally different, fully legal formula. Earn, spend, tax.
Earn, spend, tax. Okay, break that down.
A corporation earns revenue. Then, before the government takes a single dime, that corporation spends money on everything it can legally and legitimately classify as a business expense.
We are talking about business travel, client meals, vehicles, technology, legal fees, sometimes even portions of a home office.
Exactly. Only after all of those lifestyle and operational expenses are deducted from the gross income does the government step in and tax whatever small amount of net profit happens to be left over.
It is the ultimate legal shield, designed by the financially literate for the financially literate.
Let's look at the math. If an employee makes $100,000, they might lose $25,000 to taxes immediately, leaving them $75,000 to live on.
If a business owner's corporation makes $100,000, they might legally expense $70,000 in operational costs, vehicles, and equipment. They only pay taxes on the remaining $30,000 of profit.
The lesson here is emphatically not to evade taxes. That is illegal. The lesson is to understand that the wealthy play by a different set of financial physics.
If you want to build wealth, You have to become financially literate enough to understand corporate structures and use the legal frameworks available to optimize your cash flow.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
So we know the wealthy protect their money using corporate structures,
Yeah.
but how do they get the money in the first place?
That brings us to the concept that the rich invent money, which honestly sounds a bit like counterfeiting at first glance.
It does. Like they're printing it in their basement.
Right. But what we are really talking about is financial intelligence, creativity, and the ability to see what others are blind to.
The core premise here is that wealth isn't just the result of hard work. We have to shatter that illusion.
If hard physical labor alone made you rich, every construction worker, roofer, and janitor in America would be a multimillionaire.
Exactly. Wealth comes from spotting the opportunities that the masses walk right past.
And a huge part of spotting those opportunities comes down to the internal monologue we use.
The text highlights a very powerful linguistic shift that literally changes how your brain operates.
The poor dad, when faced with an investment or something he wants but doesn't have the cash for, says a declarative sentence, "I can't afford it."
The rich dad absolutely forbids those words from being spoken.
Yep. Instead, he forces the use of a question, "How can I afford it?"
The psychology behind that is absolutely brilliant. When you say, I
Mhm.
can't afford it, your brain just shuts down. The conversation is over, the file is closed.
You get to sit back in your comfort zone, turn on the TV, and be mentally lazy.
But when you ask, how can I afford it,
Mhm.
you force your brain to power up.
Yeah.
You are giving your subconscious a puzzle to solve.
It forces creativity. It forces you to look at your existing resources, your skills, your network, and figure out a way to invent the capital needed for the investment.
You shift from a victim of your circumstances to an architect of your reality.
Exactly. It transitions your mind from a state of passive acceptance to active, aggressive problem solving.
And part of that problem solving almost always involves leverage.
Yes. The rich invent money by utilizing the resources of others, most commonly the bank's money.
Right. They spot a piece of commercial real estate that is undervalued because it's poorly managed. They put a small fraction of their own money down, and they borrow the rest from the bank.
They improve the management, raise the rents, and suddenly the rental income covers the mortgage, all the expenses, and leaves a monthly profit.
They have essentially created equity and cash flow out of thin air using their financial intelligence and the bank's capital.
But wait, I have to step in here and throw a massive red flag on the play.
Uh-oh. What's the red flag?
Using debt sounds incredibly risky. Isn't debt the exact thing that traps people in the rat race to begin with?
That's a very fair point.
I mean, we just spent 30 minutes dissecting how credit cards, auto loans, and mortgages are bleeding the middle class dry, and now we are saying the secret to immense wealth is borrowing massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
What happens in a 2008-style housing crash when that duplex sits empty, the tenants are gone, and the bank still demands their monthly payment? Doesn't leverage suddenly become a financial guillotine?
That is the exact paradox that trips up millions of people. And your pushback is completely valid. Leverage amplifies both gains and losses.
So if you use leverage blindly, it will destroy you, as it did to many in 2008.
Yes, but the source provides a very clear, defining distinction. There is good debt and there is bad debt.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Debt is simply a tool, like a table saw. You can use the table saw to build a beautiful piece of furniture, or you can use it to cut off your own hand.
Oh, wow. Graphic, but true.
The tool is agnostic. The outcome depends entirely on the skill of the operator. The middle class uses bad debt to acquire depreciating liabilities. $80,000 trucks, designer clothes, luxury vacations.
That debt takes money out of their pocket every month while the underlying item loses value.
Exactly. The wealthy use good debt to acquire cash-flowing assets that outpace the cost of the borrowing.
Right. Let's break down the mechanics of that. If I borrow $50,000 at 8% interest to buy a luxury sports car, that is unequivocally bad debt.
The car loses 20% of its value the second you drive it off the dealership lot, and the monthly loan payments are draining your cash flow.
I am getting poorer every single day.
But if you borrow $50,000 to put a down payment on a small apartment building, and the tenant's rent pays the property taxes, the maintenance, the monthly mortgage payment, and still gives you $500 in net profit every month.
That is good debt.
Yes, the debt is actually putting money in your pocket.
And in an inflationary environment where the value of the dollar drops, I am paying back that fixed-rate mortgage with cheaper future dollars while the real estate appreciates.
The rich aren't afraid of debt. They respect its power. They mitigate the downside risk by ensuring strict cash flow, and they use it as a lever to multiply their purchasing power.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
Which brings us to the next paradigm shift regarding how we spend our time before we have that capital.
Instead of looking for the job with the highest starting salary, the best 401k match, or the most comprehensive dental plan, the text argues you should choose a job based entirely on what skills it will force you to learn.
Skills like B2B sales, team management, market analysis, and leadership.
You work to learn, not to earn.
The book uses the author's own early career path as a prime example, and it is a fascinating piece of U.S. corporate history.
After returning from military service in Vietnam, he had the credentials to find a very comfortable, highly secure corporate job or government position.
Instead, he intentionally sought out and took a job at Xerox.
Now, for you listening, we have to put this in context. In the 1970s, Xerox was an absolute corporate behemoth in America.
It was the Google or Apple of its day, driving technological innovation.
But he didn't go there for the prestige, the stock options, or the salary.
No, he took a grueling, high-pressure, quota-driven sales job for one specific, highly strategic reason.
He was terrified of rejection.
He was terrified of cold calling. But his rich dad advised him that if he ever wanted to be successful in building his own business, he had to master the art of persuasion.
And more importantly, he had to completely conquer his paralyzing fear of being told no.
So he put himself in the absolute crucible of corporate sales.
He spent his days carrying a heavy briefcase, knocking on office doors, getting doors slammed in his face, fumbling his pitches, and dealing with constant rejection.
Until he learned how to communicate value, how to close a deal, and how to handle rejection without taking it personally.
He used Xerox. He used this multinational corporation as his own personal paid training ground.
He was getting a salary to learn the exact transferable skills he needed to go out and build his own real estate and business empire later.
He didn't care about climbing the Xerox corporate ladder. Once he became the top salesperson and mastered the skill of selling, he quit.
He didn't stick around for the gold watch or the pension. He got what he came for.
And this ties perfectly into the book's stark warning about the danger of hyper-specialization in the modern workforce.
Yes, the source material argues that highly specialized workers are often the most financially vulnerable people in the economy.
Which runs completely counter to what universities teach.
Absolutely. Take someone who is an absolute expert in a very specific niche type of legacy computer programming, or a highly specialized middle manager in a specific manufacturing process.
They might be paid very well for years.
But if the industry shifts, if a new technology like AI emerges and makes that specific coding language or process obsolete, their single specialized skill is suddenly worthless.
Because they lack broad business skills, they have no other way to generate income. Their high salary was a trap that kept them from diversifying their skill set.
It's the old saying, you're one skill away from great wealth. But if your only skill is highly specialized labor that can be outsourced or automated, you're sitting on a trapdoor.
The true foundation of security isn't a union contract. It's having broad, highly transferable skills.
If you know how to lead a team of people, how to manage organizational cash flow, how to read macro market trends, and how to sell an idea to investors,
You can be dropped into almost any industry in the world, real estate, tech, retail, and figure out a way to build a profitable business.
you work to learn those broad architectural skills, not just to collect a paycheck for tightening a specific bolt.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
Now, understanding the mechanics of cash flow, taxes, and skill building is one thing intellectually.
But actually implementing them in the real world is entirely different because human psychology gets in the way.
Oh, humans are messy. The author identifies 5 major mental roadblocks that keep people poor: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
These are the internal enemies that stop the transition from poor dad to rich dad.
Let's really dissect these, especially cynicism, because I think it is by far the most insidious of the 5.
It is incredibly easy to spot fear, when you have knots in your stomach because you are afraid of losing your savings on an investment.
But cynicism is dangerous because it masquerades as deep intelligence.
It is the Chicken Little syndrome.
The sky is always falling. You tell a coworker you are going to invest in a rental property, and immediately they unleash a barrage of negative analysis.
Oh, the market is at the absolute top. The housing bubble is going to burst any day now. What if the tenants stop paying and trash the place? What if the pipes burst in winter and flood the basement?
Cynics are experts at analyzing why things won't work. They use their intellect and their access to negative news to justify their own inaction.
Paralysis by analysis.
And the problem is, it is incredibly contagious. If you listen to cynics, you will never take a calculated risk, and therefore you will never see a disproportionate reward.
The wealthy don't ignore risk. They aren't foolish. They analyze the risk. They financially model the downside. They buy insurance to mitigate the worst-case scenarios, and then they act.
They don't let the noise of the cynics paralyze them into doing nothing.
And closely related to that paralysis is how we reframe failure, which tackles the fear obstacle head-on.
In the traditional U.S. school system, the poor dad's domain failure is aggressively punished.
Oh, completely. If you fail a test, you get an F in red ink. You are shamed. You are labeled a bad student.
You are conditioned from kindergarten that making mistakes is a moral failing.
But the rich dad views failure completely differently. In the realm of business and investing, failure is not a permanent defeat. It is simply essential, expensive data.
It is feedback. Every time you lose money on a bad real estate deal or a failed startup, you learn a harsh, unforgettable lesson about due diligence that makes you sharper for the next deal.
The only true failure in the rich dad paradigm is quitting, or worse, never trying at all out of the fear of looking foolish.
And finally, there is the obstacle of arrogance, which the author defines in a very specific way.
It's not just having a big ego or being boastful.
Right. Arrogance is the belief that what you don't know isn't important.
Arrogant people think they already know everything there is to know about money because they have a high-paying job.
So they stop reading, they stop attending seminars, they stop asking questions.
And in a rapidly changing macroeconomic world, the moment you stop learning, you start losing your edge to those who remain curious.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
So we have dismantled the roadblocks. Now we move into the practical application. How do we actually start?
The book breaks down several actionable steps, and it begins not with a spreadsheet, but with finding a reason greater than reality.
A deeply emotional why.
If your reason for wanting to build wealth is just a vague, I want to be rich so I can buy a nice car,
Yeah.
that is not going to sustain you.
Not at all. When you are exhausted from your day job and you need to spend 4 hours analyzing real estate comps or cold calling brokers at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, the desire for a nice car won't get you through it.
You need a why that is visceral and borderline unreasonable, like I refuse to work in a cubicle until I'm 70, or I want to guarantee my family never experiences the poverty I grew up in.
It also requires choosing daily mindset habits and deliberately auditing who you surround yourself with.
The old adage is true. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
If your social circle consists entirely of people who complain about their bosses, dread Mondays, and spend all their disposable income on liabilities, their financial habits will inevitably become yours.
If you intentionally surround yourself with people discussing tax strategies, market trends, and business acquisitions, that financial intelligence and ambition will rub off on you.
But here is the most controversial piece of practical advice in this entire section. Pay yourself first.
Let's be brutally real for a second. How can someone possibly pay themselves first into an investment account when the bill collectors are literally calling their phone?
Right.
When the mortgage is due, the credit card company is charging predatory late fees, and the utility company is threatening to shut off the electricity.
Traditional financial advisors and basic common sense would say you have a moral and legal obligation to pay your debts first before you invest a dime.
It sounds completely counterintuitive, and it is definitely not advice for the faint of heart.
But the psychological analysis in the text is profound. Think about what happens when you follow the traditional advice.
When you pay everyone else first, the bank, the utility company, the government, and you tell yourself, I will save and invest whatever is left over at the end of the month, what usually happens?
There is absolutely nothing left over.
You have prioritized everyone else's business over your own. By paying yourself first, systematically taking a percentage of your income and putting it straight into your asset column before paying a single bill, you are fiercely prioritizing your own wealth creation.
But I'm going to push you on this. What about the bill collectors? You can't just ignore them. They will ruin your credit score, they will repossess your car, they will foreclose on your house.
You don't ignore them, and you certainly don't let yourself go into default.
Okay, so how does it work?
By putting your money into your asset column first, you purposely create a cash shortfall in your operating budget for your bills.
And this creates a healthy, intense, localized psychological pressure.
When the bills are due and your checking account is low because you already invested the money, you feel the heat.
That pressure forces your financial genius to kick in.
You tell yourself you absolutely cannot touch the investment money. That capital is sacred. So your brain is forced to invent a new way to generate the extra income needed to pay the creditors.
You take on a side hustle, you find a creative freelance gig, you sell things you don't need.
You use the pressure of the impending bills to expand your earning capacity, rather than letting the bills dictate and limit your entire financial life.
It is essentially playing financial chicken with yourself to force extreme growth.
It's using the fear we talked about earlier, but redirecting it to fuel your hustle instead of fueling your submission to the rat race.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
We are rounding the corner into the final actionable reinforcements. This is essentially a rapid-fire checklist from the author for those who are ready to begin.
Things like constantly seeking out new opportunities, studying historical market cycles to understand that booms and busts are entirely predictable.
And taking baby steps with small investments to learn the mechanics before risking large amounts of capital.
But there is one fascinating point here that seems almost wildly out of place in a text that is otherwise dedicated to ruthlessly accumulating and protecting assets.
The mandate to give to charity.
The author explicitly suggests that if you want money, you have to give money away.
It sounds totally contradictory.
It does. If the entire goal of this philosophy is to build an asset column, maximize cash flow, and keep as much capital working for you as possible, why on earth would you intentionally give it away to a charity or a religious organization?
But the rationale provided is deeply rooted in the psychology of wealth. It is about fundamentally shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance.
If you hold on to every single penny with a white-knuckle grip, constantly terrified of losing it, you are operating from a place of deep scarcity and fear.
The fear that there isn't enough to go around and that you won't be capable of replacing what you currently have.
Exactly. When you voluntarily give money to charity, you are sending an incredibly powerful subconscious signal to your own brain. I have plenty.
There is an absolute abundance of wealth in the world, and I possess the financial intelligence to generate more whenever I need to.
It relaxes that primal fear response. And when you are not operating out of a state of panic or scarcity, your mind is much more open to seeing the peripheral opportunities that are floating around you all the time.
Money is fundamentally a current. It's meant to flow. If you dam it up entirely out of fear, it stagnates.
Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates.
We've covered an immense amount of ground today, diving deep into the psychology, the mathematics, and the history of wealth creation.
To synthesize this overarching journey, what the source material is really demanding from you isn't just a change in your portfolio. It is a complete radical shift in your core identity.
It is asking you to transition from being an employee, someone who trades their precious, finite, unrecoverable time for heavily taxed money, into becoming an architect.
An architect who builds resilient systems, who legally utilizes corporate structures, and who relentlessly builds asset columns that generate cash flow entirely independent of their physical labor.
It requires overcoming the very natural, very human emotions of fear and greed.
It requires unlearning the flawed, outdated financial lessons of the traditional education system.
And dedicating yourself to learning the actual rules of the game that the wealthy play by.
It is not an easy path. It requires you to face the cynics in your own family, to conquer your own laziness, and to endure the extreme discomfort of learning entirely new skill sets like sales, accounting, and investing.
But the reward for that discomfort is ultimate freedom. The freedom of stepping off the treadmill and permanently exiting the rat race.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, something that really builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Tonight, pull up your own bank statements and credit card bills from the last 90 days. Look at them objectively.
If a complete stranger, a forensic accountant who knew absolutely nothing about your hopes, your dreams, or your job title, looked at exactly where your cash flowed, what would they conclude about your life's mission?
Would they say you are diligently, intentionally building your own asset column to secure your family's freedom?
Or would they say you were working tirelessly, day in and day out, bleeding cash to build the bank's asset column, the government's treasury, and the corporation's bottom line?
What if, starting tomorrow morning, you fundamentally shifted your paradigm and started treating every single dollar you keep, not as something to be spent, but as a tiny, highly trained employee whose only job in the world is to go out on the market and recruit more dollars for you?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Take a hard, honest look at your cash flow, and we'll see you next time.